And welcome back, everyone. I've finally gotten all three of the videos that I've wanted to be doing for a while out of the way, done this week. I did my prediction for Generation 10 Pokemon earlier this week. Yesterday was the dumbest Naruto decisions Naruto list, which quickly got past my. I need to be raising the stakes. I put those videos at that got to the goal I set pretty quick. And now I'm doing my updated top MCU. Now it's top 32, as we're up to the 32nd movie in the MCU. 33 will come out later this year with Miss Marvel. The Marvels. I'm sorry. So, with that said, let's just get into it. I will normally when I used to do this, I used to start with. I didn't do the worst. At the very beginning of the video, I saved it for the end because I thought, why cut off half of what you're looking forward to? But now I'm like, no, we'll just do it worst the best. So coming in at 32. Now, before I go any further, I should note I do not hate any movie on this list. All the Marvel movies, I think, on some level, are at least decent films to watch. But we're talking about decent in a repertoire of films where the majority of them are minimum good films. A decent or okay film falls low. And the first couple of these are definitely... In fact, we're not going to really hit what I think is a good film until number 26. Or 20... No. Number 27? Either way, yeah, number 27. So it's going to be a little bit before we hit what I think is a legitimate good film. So without further ado, let's start out things with what I think is let's call it what it is, the worst MCU film in the lot, Captain Marvel. Now, when I talk about a good film, especially a Marvel film, I want good characters, obviously, a lot of fun, quippy dialogue, some good humor, some great action, some special effects, and a compelling story. I don't really get any of that with this. The best we got for a character is young Nick Fury. That's it. Everyone else just seems to be kind of running flat in this movie. And while there are technically worse movies on the list in terms of how they're composited or how they're structured, or maybe they're directed, they all have something this movie doesn't. They all have an interesting, likable lead. Carol Danvers, at least as she's portrayed in this movie, is not an interesting lead. She's not charismatic. She's very bland. She's very dull. She's actually not very she's not super hateable as a character, but she's got a level of ego on her that just doesn't seem justified at all. Like the whole noble warrior heroes. I'm like, that. For some reason, that line always just rubs me the wrong way. Yeah, that's how you interpret it. Now, there are things I like in the movie. I like the fact that they didn't depict the Skrulls just as the bad guys, and that we're getting some bad guys Skrulls now in Secret Invasion, which I'm not caught up on the second episode. We're gonna probably back to back the episodes next week because we do an off and on movie night kind of thing at my place. But I do like that. Talos, Ben Mendelsohn's good in the movie. I like Talos. I also like what they're kind of talking about with the concept of war, where, look, while he was just protecting his family, he admits his hands are dirty in that too. He even says, my hands are dirty in this too. And it helps kind of what little growth the character has for Carol Danvers, grow the character of Carol Danvers a bit. But really, she's too overpowered in this film. She's not going up against anyone who could give her a straight-out fight. Jude Law gets beaten down pretty quick. So there's no real stakes in this film is the problem. Because Kevin, at the time, they brought her in as the strongest character in the MCU. That's what Kevin Feige said. So, yeah, look, it's just a flat, dull mess. And if you don't have an interesting lead, you're not going to have a good time. So, moving on, we got our number 31 spot, coming with Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World has a lot of problems with it. It does. But what it makes up for that, as I said before, was at least Thor is actually fun, likable, and interesting. Did I buy the chemistry in this movie more with him and Natalie Portman more than I did in the first one? Because I'll be honest, I liked the relationship with Jane and Thor in the first movie. I didn't think it was bad. I think they might be putting it on a little thick in this movie, and even a little thicker in Love and Thunder. But arguably, it works better in Love and Thunder. It works best in Love and Thunder, I think. But beyond that, you still get some cool visual stuff, but you get a completely lackluster villain in Malekith. Malekith is one of the most forgettable villains in the entirety of the MCU. Even the Cursed, the dark elf that turns into this giant hulking juggernaut thing, is a bit more memorable than him because at least beats Thor up, whereas Malekith got his ass handed to him by Frida, which is still a good scene. But you at least in this movie get a lot more of the Loki Thor dynamic. You actually didn't get a lot of it in the first one when you really break it down. What did you get? You got their initial interactions, your time will come, brother, all that. Then you got him sent away, the brief conversation he has with Thor when he's on Earth. Then him trying to kill Thor through the destroyer, but I don't count that. And then you don't actually have a lot of relationship with them. You get more of it, honestly, in the Avengers than you do in the original Thor. But I guess that's why the original Thor stands out. They were able to balance that very well. But then you get a lot more of their dynamic here than I think in any other movie, save for Ragnarok. So I think that really helps make up for some of the flaws. Plus, there are fun sequences in the movie. The invasion of Asgard, the escape from Asgard. There's the portal stuff at the end is kind of fun. It's not without merit, but it's definitely bottom of the heap because it's still just a mess. Way too much Kat Dennings. Kat Dennings is great in WandaVision, and she's tolerable in the first Thor. And she's got a brief scene in the fourth Thor where she's perfectly adequate. But either way, it doesn't help save the movie at all from being second from the bottom. Coming in number 30, we have Black Widow. This is a definition of a okay movie. There's stuff I love in it, and there's stuff I just don't care about, and there's stuff I think is stupid. Things I love. I love her family dynamic, particularly Red Guardian. And I think my computer's somewhat lagging just a little bit, but I think there's a lot of stuff on here that's kind of, ooh. Yeah, there is a bit of a lag. I can see, because I can actually see, yeah. Anyway, maybe it won't be laggy when it's actually fully downloaded. But anyway, I love her family dynamic. Elena is awesome. I love Florence Pugh in that movie. A lot of people said that was actually her movie. I loved Red Guardian. The action sequences when it's close to quarters combat is pretty good. And I do like some of the espionage stuff, the Jason Bourne stuff, and in like Budapest when she goes to first meet her sister. I like that stuff too. But you have two villains, one people have been wanting for a while, and you completely just destroyed the character of Taskmaster. Like Taskmaster. Seriously, how effed up did you make that character? That is not Taskmaster. What? Just because they can. And actually, I think one thing I'm going to do to help move this along a little bit is start to get rid of pictures on my OBS, so it maybe starts to. That seemed to help just a little bit. That's not Taskmaster. I'm sorry, but then no, it's not Taskmaster. He's just there. She's just that. You know what? Here's the thing. That's one of those characters, gender doesn't matter for them. Gender swapping, you could do it fine. But still keep the spirit. In fact, that would actually be a really cool version of Taskmaster if you had a female version who's still that wisecracking badass that Taskmaster ultimately is. Because Taskmaster's actually been an opponent of Deadpool a couple of times, and they can trade quips pretty well. That actually would have been a cool kind of gender swap. But no, they don't talk, nothing. Then you get Ray Winstone, who I love Ray Winstone. And yet you make him a useless villain. Such a useless villain. Don't get me wrong. That confrontation Scarlett has with him, Natasha has with him near the end, I do like that confrontation where, it's because of this. By the way, the science they're talking about is so fucking bullshit, but whatever. But it's like where she's trying to. I was like, what is the gun? Is the gun not loaded? No, it's loaded. Thank you for your cooperation. And she just hits her head. And then, so I did like that. I did like that. The suffocating the pig scene was pretty hoof, but whatever. But then there's a lot of extra CGI and just bits that just don't matter. I can't make rank it any lower than this, but like I said, it's the perfect definition of an okay film. Speaking of a film that I think is okay, that I think ranks higher on my end than some others, is Iron Man 2. Now, Iron Man 2 is a black sheep kind of film. Most people agree it was not as good as Iron Man 1, but at the same time, the MCU was just starting out, so it was still very much, we were taking what we could get. We got Robert Downey Jr. back. Robert Downey Jr. is great. We got now our new roadie. Unfortunately, it's a shame what happened with Terrence Howard, but it is what it is. And it is fun. I think it is fun. I also think Whiplash is a fun villain. Justin Hammer being what the wannabe Tony Stark is a fun concept. And you get Sam Rockwell, who apparently may be coming back for Armor Wars, which would make sense. I'm looking forward to that. Give me Sam Rockwell any day of the week, baby. I love me some Sam Rockwell. But the reason it just falls so low is it's just kind of, okay, Tony is dying. Oh, he's not dying. Okay, he's got a new suit. Great. Fight the bad guy. Nothing of consequence actually happens in the film, apart from the fact that him and Pepper get together. That's it. That's really it. And we get War Machine. But that's it. The climax is a little better than the Iron Man 1's climax. You get all the drones they're fighting. This is actually a pretty fun climax, I think. But I mean, it's hampered by a bunch of different plot holes where it's like, wait, no, this wouldn't work because of this and this. How did he make this? The arc reactor again? Like this, he even says it's a passable knockoff. So there's stuff to like, but there's also just a bunch of questions that doesn't make sense how this guy is getting away with this. So coming in, so that's number 29. Coming in at 28, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Now look, I have been on record saying that I like this film a lot more than a lot of the other people who saw it. But you introduce Kang, great. Jonathan Majors is fantastic. I've been not talking a lot about the Jonathan Majors stuff right now because I don't talk about that kind of stuff usually on the channel. I will say this though, apparently there is now more evidence coming out that he's innocent, which is, if he is innocent of everything they're saying, fantastic. Because I loved him as a performer, and you don't want to find out someone you love as a performer is a terrible human being. But we'll wait to see ultimately where that goes. And if he is actually turns out he did do it, then we'll screw him then. But again, that's my little take on it. We'll see again what happens. He's going to be in court very soon. Actually, I think August is the take. But besides that, Jonathan Majors is awesome. Look, actually, I think Hank Pym. This is probably the biggest amount of time Hank Pym's ever gotten to shine, and Michael Douglas owns that. That scene where he comes out, just casually walking with all these monster ants behind him, and do you see the look? I remember, was it New Rockstars who broke it down and said that look Kang gives him? It's almost like he recognized Hank, you again. He's battled Hank and maybe lost before, and Hank's now. Look, I can understand the concept of why Kang getting beaten by ants, of all things, bothers some people. That made sense to me. They were all giant, first off. Second, they are all technologically advanced, possibly even beyond him. So, you know what? Bite me. I think that worked. Now, while I like the fact they brought MODOK into a film, there was no need to bring MODOK in the film. When you actually break it down, MODOK being in this film served no point. You could have just had another obscure Marvel character be his henchman, and it probably would have worked out fine. It was great to see, was it Cody? It's not Kobe Smulders. That's Maher Hill. The guy who played him, the Yellow Jacket, Darren. It's great to see him back. And people were theorizing he was going to be MODOK, and they were right, but he just didn't serve the purpose. It's also visually, while it looks nice, it is so CGI, it's actually painful. You can tell immediately when they're on the volume stage. It's so jarring. Bill Murray, I liked him in the movie. Believe it, I liked his scene, especially when he got serious. Like, you bought this guy was actually a bit threatening when he got serious. But again, didn't really serve a point apart from Bill Murray being in the movie. And while she ultimately became okay by the end of the film, Cassie, after a second viewing of the film, really got under my skin. This young activist mentality, you could be doing more. People are still suffering. The fight's not over yet, Dad. You're not doing anything. Like, bitch, he was in the quantum realm for what seemed like 5 hours, and he lost 5 years, almost lost you, lost your mother, lost hope, and lost everything, and then had to save the world. Back the F off. You have nothing to stand on right now. And yet she's got this save the world mentality, this bleeding heart mentality that ultimately comes in kind of to save the day at the end, but it really is just, she really gets, because she's that typical teen who thinks she knows the world better than you at this point. And that just irritates me, that young arrogance that we tend to have. All right, so coming in now at 27, like I said, we now get into the films that are legitimately good, with Captain America, the First Avenger. This film, look, I remember this film coming out, and I'm like, this is a good film. The more I said it, I'm like, yeah, this is a really good film. I like this film. Steve Rogers is a likable hero. The Red Skull is a great antagonist. It's a period piece. You get Tommy Lee Jones. You get Peggy Carter. Honestly, why is it this low on the list? My only real answer is, I will say this, looking back on it, some of the digitally imposed head on the little body stuff does look a little off occasionally, but that's nitpicking. Stanley Tucci as Dr. Erskine. I loved him. Honestly, I just think all the films here are just a little bit better, or better in some capacity. And yeah, that's right. I think Eternals is better than this film because it's higher on the list. So that being said, what comes in at number 26? Well, it's a film that came out a little before it. That'd be The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. This was the Hulk that I think we wanted to see. Not this freaking Eric Bana just thought-provoking piece, but done in comic book editing. Like, you're trying to be serious while having... Emily did not know what he was doing with this film. He didn't. Like, I get, apparently he wanted every transition to feel like it was coming off the comic book page, but man, he didn't know what he was doing with that film. Here, it's the Hulk looks good. The Hulk looks really solid. I mean, you can still see it's CGI. Abomination actually looks better on the CGI than Hulk does. But this actually might be my favorite design of the Hulk. This very lean, muscular, looks like an MMA fighter kind of guy. Whereas I do love the Hulk we have in the MCU now, the Mark Ruffalo Hulk. He's pudgier, yes, but he does still look like the Hulk, and I love him. But design-wise, this is kind of like my favorite version of the Hulk we've had. Now, that said, it's, again, not perfect. It is an ugly-looking film. It's actually it looks very different than the rest of the MCU, because they were still very much trying to work things out with, I think, their tone. And I love Edward Norton as the Hulk. He's actually a really good Bruce Banner. He's a very different Bruce Banner than the other two, Eric Bana and Mark Ruffalo. He's basically the most serious, less awkward of them. He's the least nerd-like, but I kind of like that too. The fight sequences, there aren't a lot of them, obviously, because most of it's Hulk tearing shit up. That warehouse scene is kind of fun, like a monster movie. The scene, them attacking the campus is really cool. I like that. And the climax with him and Abomination is fine. And I think there's a problem is that there's actually not enough of them fighting in that fight sequence. There's an entire, I think, 2-minute chunk where the Hulk's been blasted through a building and they're just attacking the Abomination. I'm like, no, give us more of this. And then they get back to it. It's all good. It's all well and good. The card boxing gloves is fun. I think what just brings it down lower is it's an early MCU film that still has a lot of kinks that need to be worked out. Editing, pacing, I mean, it's mostly fine, but it also struggles at points. All the characters are well and good. We got introduced to General Ross, who God rest his peace, William Hurt. God rest in peace, William Hurt. We now got Harrison Ford to take the mantle, so they're not trading down. That's for certain. Um, and yeah, and we got Eli Roth, Tim Roth. Tim Roth is the Abomination. He was great, and I'm glad we got him back in She-Hulk, though maybe they could have used him a little bit better. Anyway, though, 26 is the Hulk. Coming in at 25, speaking of something I just brought up, Eternals. Now, Eternals, this is a hot button issue. This is a hot button thing. For some people, this is the worst film ever, but this got a big second life on Disney Plus. Apparently, my girlfriend puts it on constantly, just putting it on in the background. Eternals was a very ambitious film, detailing the events of the MCU's like Earth history throughout the entirety of Earth, and what how the Eternals were playing a part in it, what they were doing, and I think it's a very interesting film in concept. And we're talking about creationism with the Celestials. It's now already that sets and you know what? If Kang is defeated in Kang Dynasty, I now think I know how Secret Wars is going to play out. Because the Celestials seem to be able to exist. They exist in probably like a different dimension. And because Secret Wars has a lot of crossover events, I think the Judgment Earth is going to be Secret Wars. The judgment of multiple Earths. And then one Earth comes out on top. And that's how the multiverse ultimately closes. I think that's how it's going to go down. But I digress. So we get all that. It's great to see the Celestials. But this film does feel like it drags. It's a very slow-paced film. When there is an action sequence, it's fun. But that being said, oh crap! What are the name of the monsters? The Eternals. This is how bad. This is how forgettable some of this movie is. I don't remember the name of the monsters. Deviants. The Deviants. That's what they were called. The Deviants in concept were cool. But I wish we could have seen like the full progression, like the one that kept evolving. I wish we could have seen the full progression of that. Beyond that, though, there are good things. I love all the actors. Angelina Jolie, I think, is good. Tyler or something Henson. Fastos. I loved Fastos. My girlfriend actually got very emotional when he saw the devastation of Hiroshima and what his technology had done. Icarus was a fun, turncoat kind of villain. Makari and Makoto, they were good. So and Kingo, who doesn't love Kingo, man? So there's a lot to like, but there's some CGI that's a big issue. So ultimately, this is my number 25. My number 24 comes in the form of Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3, a lot of people put on a bit of a lower placing. I'm among them. But it's not for what you think. I actually like the concept of what they did with the Mandarin, specifically because we got ultimately the Mandarin later on down the road. But while I like what they were doing with the whole concept of Tony, Tony is Iron Man. Like, no matter what, even without a suit, he is Tony Stark. It is an Iron Man film. We kind of want Iron Man. The climax is fun, all the different suits, but the fact is like, we're not exactly sure what all these suits are supposed to do. So, it would have been nice to get some sort of designation for that. Beyond that, I mean, it's still Robert Downey Jr. being, the boss, like being in the role that revitalized his career, brought him back, it shows us just why he's so freaking likable. Pepper Potts is good in this film too. Rhodey's got a fun story, showing up. The whole fight on the plane, rescuing the passengers, might be one of the highlights of the film. And I like Guy Pearce a lot. I do. He's just kind of a villain. When I redo the villain list at some point, and I will, he's probably going to rank pretty low. He's very charismatic. I love me a charismatic villain, but in terms of a threat, I really never buy him as a threat. So, yeah, at number 24, I got Iron Man 3. At number 23, I have Thor 4. A lot of 3s, 2s, and 4s in this list. Actually, there's only one 4, because, yeah. And, yeah, Love and Thunder, the notorious Love and Thunder. My review, you can check my review. You can check my review out for all these films. But that's, or at least all the films that I have been doing a review for since I've been doing this channel. But look, the stuff I like. I think this is the best we've seen the Jane Foster and Thor relationship, because I think the cancer subline or subplot, I think really helps ground the relationship and kind of focus Thor on what he likes. Visually, I think the movie also looks pretty good. It looks good visually. It's not, the CGI isn't terrible or anything like that. And Gore, while underutilized, is still a fantastic villain. And the climax of the film ultimately is the bad guy wins. But he's able to be convinced, like, yeah, you could bring her back. You have any wish you want, and you're going to just, instead of bringing her back, and then he realizes, yeah, I'm dying, and then, I brought my daughter back in. Like, that's a good way to kind of wrap that up. I just wish they showed more of him butchering God, so he could be called the God Butcher and earn that title. And you know what? As funny and goofy as the climax fight is, you can put some November Rain on that. I'm there. I'm like, okay, you win. You win. It's fun. I'm liking it. Now, but that being said, things I didn't like. They underutilized Gore. They spent a little too. I think it's agreed. They just went too goofy. And goof can work, and goof does work. I mean, the other films have goof in them, but gosh, but there's goof that works and goof that doesn't. And the Screaming Goats, I quickly kind of got over with. All the gods, like the god of dumplings, too many jokes. If you had been able to keep the level between of this on a Ragnarok level, this would have worked. In fact, if you had gone Ragnarok tone and level of balance with its humor and darkness, because Odin dies, Thor loses an eye, Asgard's destroyed, the Warriors 3, except for Sif, are killed. You could have really made a good film here. Like, as far as it stands, I think it's a solid film. I like it more than most. But man, if you had been able to go Thor Ragnarok on your balance levels here, this would have been a $1 billion film. I'm saying it right now. This would have been $1 billion film if you could have balanced that at Ragnarok, which was universally loved. Hit that perfect balance. You would have been probably able to do more with Gore, like show him butchering gods. There was a deleted scene with Lena Headey, I believe, where I'm guessing she was probably a goddess he killed. So that's probably what that scene was. And there was a whole lawsuit about that and her scene getting cut. So yeah, Thor Love and Thunder makes it a 23 spot. Still not even in the upper half. Speaking of films that aren't in the upper half, Ant-Man and the Wasp 2. Or Ant-Man and the Wasp. So Ant-Man 2, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yeah, this is just a fun comedy. This is just a fun heist comedy, and I am here for it. I love the banter between them. Really, honestly, what drags this down, even Ghost is a fun villain. Isn't even the right term. She's an antagonist, but she's just trying to live. And she's going to be back in Thunderbolts, which is cool. So I actually liked what they did with her and that concept. What kind of slowed the roll down in the movie for me definitely is Justified guy. I can't remember his name. His villain was really unnecessary. You probably could have I love that actor. I do, and I'm forgetting his name. But and he's fine in the movie, but he's completely unnecessary. And his character seems to kind of just drag everything down when he's on screen. We want to get back to the whole Ghost subplot, Hank, them trying to get Michelle Pfeiffer out of the quantum realm. We want to go back to all that. Not this guy. So ultimately, yeah. By the way, I'm going to try to be a little quicker now because we're already getting to the 30-minute mark, and I don't want to go on for an hour if I can help it. So anyway, moving into the 21 spot, we have the original Thor. I remember seeing this twice. I saw it once in 3D. Terrible in 3D. Just because it's so dark. Even then you put these dark glasses on. But no, this was like the first time we really went outside the comfort zone of the MCU, which isn't saying much because we had what Iron Man, a guy in a suit, great. The Hulk, great. But now we were Captain America, great. But now we were going into um, no, actually no, Captain America came after this. But now we were going into gods and magic, and how do we represent that? And I think they struck that perfect balance. Magic is actually just science you don't fully understand, at least the way they do it. Later on, we find it's a bit more than that. But you get Anthony Hopkins as Odin, some great scenes with them between him and Chris Hemsworth, him and Loki. You get a couple good fight scenes too. It's really this is where the slow pacing at points can really work because you need Thor to have that journey. And Chris Hemsworth is so likable and endearing that you really buy it. Again, I also stand as one of the people who actually likes the Jane Thor relationship. Granted, is it kind of forced? Yeah, it's kind of forced just a little bit. But it's still, I think, a relationship, at least in my opinion, that does work. Kat Dennings is tolerable in this film. There are points though where she just doesn't shut up, and I like Kat Dennings, but the way the Darcy character kind of needs to shut up at points. And then what you got? We don't see much of Idris Elba in this film. We got the most we get of Idris Elba is in the third film, where he actually gets some legit action sequences. Second film too, he actually takes down a ship on his own. And then you get the cool fight where he's invading the Shield camp, and we get the first introduction of Hawkeye. Why is it as low as it is? Well, I think they are able to evolve their storytelling beyond this, series after a while. It's also a pretty dark film at points. Like the whole Frost giant plane. It's hard to see what's going on in that movie or that scene a lot. It is kind of on the dark side in terms of visuals, so it is difficult to make stuff out. The blonde eyebrows is a nitpick, but yeah, that was unnecessary. So yeah, there was a lot that this film still needed to work on to create the better Thor movie, which obviously comes down on the list much later. So coming in at our number 20 spot is the original Ant-Man. Now, the original Ant-Man, I think, is a perfect little movie. Not a perfect movie, but a perfect little movie. And sorry, I'm still testing the lag on my, there's still a lot of lag going. Not a lot, but just enough. It's because it's the first time we've had a heist movie in the MCU, and they really break down, like, okay, you're going to need to break into this and this, but then before we do that, we got to undo the laser grid. And you see it happening all at once. Like, that's really cool. Michael Douglas is always a win. They really make Paul Rudd the likable underdog. He's very charming. But he's also a guy who's made mistakes. He's screwed up, and you buy this. Plus, who doesn't love his posse? Louise, is it Tyrese? And I can't remember the other one. The Russian guy. Baba Yaga Kazverchir. That's the second one. That was funny. Look, and you get some cool stuff with the shrinking. Definitely some unique visuals there. Yellow Jacket is a perfectly adequate villain. He does go with the trope of the villain is just a reflection of the hero, so there is that. But overall, I know this is one I can rewatch. We've hit the point now where we've hit a lot of the ones that I can just rewatch over and over again. This is one I can rewatch over and over again. Speaking of which, number 19 is Doctor Strange. Again, going in a completely different realm of storytelling with the MCU, going into actual concepts of magic, what that magic actually is and what it does. Different dimensions, string theory. The whole Inception buildings folding under each other is freaking awesome. And while we have yet to see the return of Dormammu, Dormammu looked interesting. He's not the Dormammu I would have wanted. I would love the giant firehead guy. But the way he defeats him is wholly unique. And is just a unique way to end a movie. But again, you suffer from a relatively lackluster villain, and it sucks. Matt Mikkelsen is so good, and he's fine, but it's just It's just Plus, I look back on the movie now, and I'm like, why can't you guys be more upfront with people? Like, tell him what you do before any of this. It's like, when are you going to tell me what we are? It's like, yeah, why didn't you? Because he wasn't ready. Shut up about being ready. You know what? This is why you have such a turnout. Um, Tilda Swinton was good in them. I liked the concept of her as the ancient one. Screw the controversy people were giving her. I don't know. Something about that just kind of irks me. And again, visually, it's very unique. And again, the only reason I rank it as low as I do is because I just think the films that came out after fact are better. So, yeah, Doctor Strange, number 19. Coming in number 18, we have Spider-Man Far From Home, which I think is definitely the weakest of the Spider-Man movies. Now, the upsides, it's very sprawling. I love Tom Holland and Zendaya, and their relationship is so cute. And the fact that they hooked up in real life, Tom and Zendaya, good on you, man. It's like good for you guys. You get to walk out in life with Zendaya on your arm. That's a win. But beyond that, I mean, what we get Mysterio, and excuse me, I need to clean this floor still again. Like, how dirty is this floor, Papa? I've cleaned it 3 times this week. It's still there's still the smell. She's made some accidents on the floor, and it's just sunk in. But anyway, so you get Mysterio, and you get this. He's actually like for someone from a different dimension. Okay, multiverse. But then we realize he's not, and he's just another disgruntled Stark employee. And look, for a while that didn't bother me, but when I really think of it and go to the well, I'm like, yeah, why are Spider-Man's villains Stark's villains? And look, there's no excuse. The Edith. Why? Why give this to a 16-year-old kid? This makes no sense. Now, keep it maybe in a trust for him, locked away until the time comes to give it to him. That makes 100% sense. But no, that is such a glaring plot hole that it just, But you still get these cool visuals with the elementals. You get that awesome Mysterio hallucination sequence that he does for Peter. What I will admit, though, is that him not actually having the suit, except only when he's like actually there in person. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that he doesn't have it, but yeah, it's still bad. And the fact that we get to see that Nick Fury and Maria Hill were actually Skrulls, it's Mortalis and his wife. That's kind of fun. So yeah, coming in at number 18 is Spider-Man Far From Home. Coming in at number 17 is Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Again, a movie, and I have to reiterate this obviously, but a movie that was facing the biggest uphill. It had everything working against it. It was COVID. They lost their lead. And so they had to work with rewriting the script with that in mind, rewriting this with the COVID issue going on, doing this, trying to get everything done. And the fact they were able to make a film that I think ranks in just below the bottom half of the list, or just below the upper half of the list, is a testament. The film is very, very good. It is also very heavy and dealing with a lot of very personal subjects. Grief. How do we deal with grief? How do we not let it consume us? The introduction of Namor, who is fantastic in the film. We get Ironheart, who's good. Ironheart is good in the film. M'Baku's always stand out. And obviously we get Shuri's story. And what's going on here? Angela Bassett, nominated for Best Actress, deserved it. But, it went to Jamie Lee Curtis, which is fine. Jamie Lee Curtis honestly deserved it too. But the reason I think it falls just short of this, of the actually upper half, is because the longer I sat on the film, the more it's like there are a lot of problems with this film. A, Namor, you got the balls to invade someone's country and tell them what to do? You got some balls. That's not their problem. Sorry, it's not their problem. Then then there's as they put out, hey, why don't we bring our military onto the water where they're at their strongest? Problem. But then my biggest problem at this point is Shuri's anger makes no sense in this movie. She says, like, if I stare at this fire for too long, it's not this funeral dress. It's not that this dress is going to burn. It's the world. And I'm listening to that line in the theater. The first time, I'm like, huh, interesting. And the longer I lingered on it, I'm like, this makes no sense. Did the world kill your brother? Like, are you angry because the world's coming for you guys, and now your brother's dead? They're taking advantage of his death. There's just no logical leap for that level of hatred. So, unfortunately, those issues really kind of subtract the movie down and just keep it from making it the top half of the list. Speaking of which, coming in number 16, we have Spider-Man Homecoming. What I do think is the better movie compared to Far From Home. Vulture is one of the best villains in the MCU. We really are seeing the early career of Peter Parker here. And the fact that, I've heard people argue about how they hate the Iron Man suit or the Iron Spider suit. It's like, well, why not give every other Avenger an Iron Man suit? Then it's like, because all the other Avengers are freaking adults who have been doing this for years, have experience, and don't actively need it. This kid is still a damn kid. He's as smart as he is. He's an idiot. And he proves it multiple times in this movie. So, yeah, that's why he gets an Iron Man suit, because he's Tony's responsibility. So I don't want to hear the whole, hey, they turned him into a mini Iron Man, bite me. It makes sense Tony would put that in there. But yeah, and I love Vulture. That scene in the theater where Vulture actually opens the door and he's Peter's crush's father always goes, oh, like it was one of those, like, oh shit. Man, it really is so good. Iron Man is not overly used. He's used appropriately. We meet Ned and Zendaya for the first time, and Ned and MJ, which works out great. Happy is delightfully bumbling, kind of. Aunt May is great. So it's a good film. It's just such an entertaining ride. Is there anything I don't like in the film? I'll admit, the Shocker stuff is just kind of there. There's no real need for it. But, yeah, all right, Shocker's there, fine. So, yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home is my number 16. Coming in at number 15, we have the original Guardians of the Galaxy. Yes, that's right. The original Guardians of the Galaxy is my third favorite of the series. And look, there is nothing wrong with the film save maybe the villain. The villain is just kind of a know-nothing villain again. And whereas we get better villains in the Guardians movies later down the road, you had to start somewhere. And he's not god-awful. Lee Pace is doing everything he can. He's supposed to be he's zealot and serious and all that. But yeah, what you're really watching this for is the Guardians, for Rocket, for Groot, for Peter, for Gamora, for Drax, and to see those interactions. And they are hilarious, and you buy, ultimately, this family they make at the end. The action sequences are visually stunning. This was our first leap into the intergalactic side of the MCU, and it still works so very well to this day. Still such a rewatchable film. So, coming in at number 14, we had Spider-Man No Way Home. The best, I think, of the three Spider-Men in the MCU to date, until we get Spider-Man 4. Maybe that will be even better. But, look, this was fan service, no doubt about it. But it was fan service done to perfection. This is how you do fan service. You integrate it into the story and make it pivotal to the story. All the returning actors, Alfred Molina, Willem Dafoe, hell, Reese Reese who played the Lizard, he was there. They got Thomas Hayden Church to come back, Jamie Foxx, come on! That was, and then of course the scene where we see, the two Spider-Men, Andrew and Tobey show up. Man, that got such a big kick. Especially that first time when we saw Andrew coming, I'm like, I'm thinking at first, is that Venom? He's pretty lanky. Then we're seeing it, and wait, and then finally there's Andrew. I'm like, yeah! And the climax, man! The climax is so freaking good. Oh, it's so good. And then that first scene where Doc Ock comes onto the scene. It's so good. Oh, it's so amazing. I will say there are still plot holes in this movie, particularly the spell. Now, I love cinema wins. I disagree with them. This is Doctor Strange's fault. At least not 100% Doctor Strange's fault. Here's the thing. That scene, the whole wiping the memory clean. First off, he's 100% right. You wanted me to mind wipe the entire world and you didn't even think to plead your case? And he just kicks him out? Yeah, this is where people, I think, really still need to get the understanding that these are still kids by all accounts. They're teens, yeah, late teens, but they're still kids. They still have a lot of growing to do. Peter's kind of an idiot at points. He's socially an idiot. And that's not Doctor Strange's fault. He came pleading with him. Like, his life was ruined and everything. He came pleading with him. And, Strange had the ability to do it. Yeah, it was a dangerous spell, but he's used it before effectively and nothing bad happened. So he had prior knowledge it wouldn't work. Or it would work. It was Peter who kept trying to F it up, who kept effing it up. And when I go back to Simpsons, he says, yeah, no, this is maybe going back to Doctor Strange 2 where you're trying to live two lives. I'm like, no, he's not. Doctor Strange is not trying to be Doctor Strange and then Sorcerer Doctor Strange. He's just Doctor Strange. He's not trying to live two lives. I don't know where that comparison came from. Peter, on the other hand, had a secret identity that no one was supposed to know about, and it got revealed. So, yeah, that's trying to live two lives. And Peter should have, I will say they probably should have set up how this should have gone prior. But, the spell, who you wanted to remember. But, yeah, it's still a mess of plot. And beyond that, hot take, May is too much of a bleeding heart. Because you know what? Yeah, helping them is great. But you know what's better? Helping all the billions and trillions around I'm sorry. This is one of those cases where the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, not the one. It's nice you wanted to help these guys, but guess what? The multiverse is going to effing break apart if you don't send them home. So May, get off your high horse and send these guys home. Yeah, it's not going to end well, but send them home. And that mentality, and Peter adopts that mentality. And if it wasn't for some freaking Deus Ex Machina shenanigans here, it would have blown up in their faces. So, May's not the villain, but she didn't help at all, actually. Now, granted, it's semantics because it still gives us, some great scenes. Oh, Peter, it's good to see you. How are you? I'm trying to do better. It's like, yeah, so... I don't know. Those are some problems I do have, but still, number 14. Number 13 goes to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Yep, I was the one people who liked it more than the original. Particularly the concept of fathers and sons. This movie came out right after my mom passed away. So when we're talking about familial relationships and how we yearn for that connection, this struck a chord with me. Particularly that end scene, man. Cat Stevens... I don't even remember the name of the song. It's not time to make a change. Just relax. And I have to go away. I think it's that one. Is that the name of the song? I don't remember the name of the song. But point being, that song, man, I almost cry like a baby every time now I hear that song. Because my thoughts go to my mom. Beyond that, though, you get Ego, who's a far more compelling villain than most of the villains we've had on this list so far. Kurt Russell is jovial but menacing at once. You get the introduction of Mantis, that great freaking action sequence on the kiln, where Ryandu and Rocket and group break out of prison. And say, come a little bit closer, you're my kind of man. So big and so damn good. So damn good. You get a really satisfying end to Yondu's story as well. Now, the one thing I will say, the Sovereign are kind of a useless group of villains. They even come back in the Volume 3, and they're just kind of useless. And Drax the Destroyer doesn't do a lot of destroying. So there is that. But beyond that, I rank this, and it's got one of the best soundtracks ever. Well, this might, I think, be my best favorite soundtrack of the group. But it's so good. So good. I got you. Do. Yeah. So, yeah, coming in at number 12, though, we have Black Panther. Now, let me get the very few things I don't like in this movie out of the way. Some of the CGI is shit. Everyone agrees on that. That's actually about it. And again, I think I'm almost got the lag's almost gone. But that's about it. Because otherwise, you're giving us this leader of this country. It's the first major black superhero since Blade to be on screen, and it showed like the important cultural significance of this character can never be understated, of what it meant to people to see this character on screen for the first time. Killmonger to date is still one of the best MCU villains ever. He is menacing, he is charming, he is lethal, but most importantly, he is understandable where he comes from. You could buy into this guy's cause and understand where he's coming from. Granted, he's taking a very extreme approach because now he's going to go on the opposite side of things and just start going like killing people. But he's still a very, very charismatic leader. And ultimately, that line he has at the end, where bury me at sea with my ancestors knew it was better to jump from the boats to live in slavery, and he just pulls out the knife and lets himself the blade and just lets himself bleed out. Like, damn, that's powerful. The climax is also a little janky at points. Like some of the CGI is a little but overall, man, Andy Serkis's claw comes back again. You get Martin Freeman showing up again, actually for the first time. So it is such a damn good. And look, long live. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman, man. We miss you every day. So that's number 12 for me. Number 11, we're getting near the top 10 now. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Such a surprise. If you love martial arts movies, that bus sequence alone is worth the trip. But going into Eastern culture, finding out the true Mandarin, the Ten Rings, not Simu Liu, that's Tony. Is it Tony Zhang? Is that not Tony? Liu. Something Liu. The villain, the Mandarin in this case. He's talking about, again, one of the best Marvel villains, because really, he runs an organization of assassins, which is terrible. But when you really look at everything he's doing in the film, until he goes and tries to break out his wife, he's really not doing many villainous acts until he breaks into that village. And you understand where he's coming from. Tony Leung, that's his name. He is, and the relationship between him and Shang are fantastic. I love the fact they didn't make him and Awkwafina a love interest, at least not for this time around. Maybe later down the road they could be. Like a friendship that evolves into a romance is totally fine. It was a great post-credit scene. Look out to California. Wong doing karaoke is great. So, and again, the action, the mythology, this was just such a pleasant surprise, and everyone seemed to just love it. So, yeah, for me, this is a number one. Not number one, but this is number 11. But it just barely makes it out of the top 10, because now we're in the top 10 MCU films for me. Number 10, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Yes, there are problems with the film, but my God, the Sam Raimi-ness and the horror aspect of it. This is the closest to a horror film we've ever had in the MCU. Is phenomenal. The Scarlet Witch as the villain is fantastic. She is legit nightmare fuel. Going and seeing the Illuminati, seeing these alternate versions of characters, the Reed Richards stuff, Black Bolt, for God's sake, Professor X, this is just all like, nerdgasm. And then her wasting the Illuminati is just, holy crap. It's just so good. And then like talking about consequences and being a hypocrite and whether or not Strange is a hypocrite. And by the way, I'm sorry, you can argue this all you want. Again, this is another thing where I've heard like Cinemawins, who I love. It's like, yeah, Strange is kind of a hypocrite. It's like, no. Yes, but not in this. You're talking about, I break the rules, I get in trouble. You break the rules, you're a hero. That doesn't seem fair. Bitch, you took over a town and controlled their minds and slayed them so you can play house with your dead android robot boyfriend. Every time he's broken the rules, it's actually to save people. So you know what? You shut your mouth. there's no. You don't have a foot to stand on here. I'm sorry. The people who try to argue in her favor when she says it's not fair, I'm like, are you paying attention to the films? Are you paying attention to the series? Visually, by the way, this is so freaking macabre and was just zombie strange, rotting as a corpse, just doing the magic. The eyeball popping up at Shumagorath. That interdimensional walkway they're on to begin with. It's all just so freaking visually unique. The music battle between Sinister Strange is cool. I love that scene. But I can, I said, of course I'm happy. And I came to this damn haunted house and wondered why I lied. You ever wonder why? You ever had that dream where you're falling and then you wake up before you hit the bottom? That was probably me. Man. It's just, I loved this film so much. So much. So Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness comes in at number 2. Coming in number 9, as you can probably guess, it ranked higher than the other two. I finally came to terms with I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the best of the 3. I still like the soundtrack to number 2 better, and I think I like the ending just a little better in Volume 2 as well. But otherwise, complete package. This is the perfect end to a series of movies. This is the perfect finale to a series of characters. And there's nothing more we can say to James Gunn, but thank you for this. We see the conclusions of all these characters' arcs. We finally find out Rocket's backstory. And my God, how heartbreaking is that backstory? And you are just so, I heard people crying in the theater when I saw it. Can I come? Of course you can come, but not yet. Him crying when Lila is killed. Oh my God. And my God, you haven't hated someone in the MCU so much with the High Evolutionary in so long. The High Evolutionary is such an ass, but so good at it too. Yes, you in the crying game, P1. So freaking terrible, but so good. The action sequences are pretty solid too. That nose to Brooklyn hallway fight scene. Just, oh yeah. The name's Rocket Raccoon. They just beat the shit out of him. Just beat the crap out of him. And again, a great soundtrack. 100%. So yeah, this is definitely, and by the way, that opening, because I heard the soundtrack before, I knew the soundtrack before the movie, because they released it prior. When I saw Creep was on there, the Radiohead acoustic version, I knew that was the opening of the film. I knew, and my God, is that just such a perfect song to represent Rocket. My God, it's just so heartbreaking, so beautiful. So ultimately, yeah, that is my number 9. Number 8, the original Iron Man. Even after all this time, the first movie of the MCU is still a near flawless movie, in my opinion. Yeah, it's one of the things it does suffer from is a kind of just climax, but it's not a bad climax. Jeff Bridges, I don't see Jeff Bridges. I see Obadiah Stane. It's one of those movies roles where I'm like, I'm not looking at Jeff Bridges. I'm seeing the character he's playing. Sorry, a little something caught in the throat. Terrence Howard, I liked him as Rhodey. I think he would have been a good War Machine. I'll be honest, I like Don Cheadle more because we've had him for so long now. But yeah, and just that first suit up of him turning into Iron Man is so fantastic. It really is a man who has to reevaluate himself and be born again and rise from the ashes. So it's still one of the best Marvel movies, in my opinion, in terms of how it's paced, how it's structured, and where it ultimately ends. And obviously gives us the famous post-credit scene of, I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative. Perfect ending. Truth is, I am Iron Man, and then Iron Man starts playing. Thor Ragnarok as the number 7 spot. This is the best Thor film. It perfectly captured the balance of humor, wackiness, dark tone, serious nature of what's going on, all in that Taika Waititi wit, charm, and humor. It's Hela is one of the better villains in the MCU by far. And when you can throw the immigrant song in there not once but twice, you got a winner. So look, I could at this point I'm just going to really be summarizing my my points at this point because we're already at an hour. So look, there's nothing that I really hold against this film at all. There's nothing wrong with this film. This film is just so fun. I've rewatched it multiple times. I'll still do it as time goes by. So congrats on Thor Ragnarok, man. Thor Ragnarok is just fantastic. Super fun, super humorous. The Doctor Strange cameo works in this world. And, you know, they still were able to bring in the serious nature of what was going on and further move the plot of the MCU. Asgard's destroyed, Odin is dead. So, yeah, coming in, though, now at number 6, you'll notice none of these films has been on the list yet. Avengers, the original one. That's right. The original Avengers ranks only at number 6 for me because the other Avengers movies I think are better overall. But this was the first time anything like this had ever been done. The culmination of phase 1, where all these characters from different movies who exist in the same universe finally come together and save the day. Is it the best writing in the world? Not necessarily. Is it great one-liners and great action? Absolutely. And ultimately, that's what you need. And to this day, the fight of New York is still one of the best climaxes of any film ever, period. End of story. And it set us up for the big purple man himself, Thanos. There's nothing more I can say about this film that probably hasn't already been said. What I can say, though, believe it or not, is that while I think this film has a few more flaws, I think the things that work better in this film work better than the original. I actually fall as a camp of someone who likes Avengers Age of Ultron more than the Avengers. Because while Loki is charming, Loki does get tiring after a while. Ultron is another villain that I think gets slept on a lot. He is extremely charming, charismatic, but lethal at the same time because he is also a machine. He is cold, he is ruthless, and he will kill you. And yeah, it's one of those characters that is just, I think, so perfectly cast with James Spader. Is the climax as good as the City of New York fight in Avengers 1? No, not really. But it's still damn good. The character interactions, these are not characters who have known each other for a while, and you can feel that. Because that scene on the party alone where trying to lift Thor's hammer is one of those just quintessential perfect scenes. You wouldn't change anything about it. The birth of the Vision is so unique and wonderful. And then that last moment he and Ultron have at the end of the movie, they'll destroy stuff. That is true. But something isn't perfect because it lasts. And there is grace in their falling. I think you missed that. You are unbearably naive. Well, I was born yesterday. So, yeah, I think it just works better in many ways over the original Avengers. That's a hot take, I know, but yeah. Coming in at number 4 is the fourth Avengers, Endgame. So yeah, I think Infinity War is better than Endgame. Short and sweet. The first 2 acts are good, but are clunky, and there are just issues and just plot points all over the place. But it doesn't matter, because that last climactic act is one of the greatest things to ever be put on comic book screens ever, period. Its finale is better than anything on this list, period. This has the best finale of any MCU movie, in my opinion. And that includes the top 3. The top 3 are better composed films as a whole, but this has the best climax ever. Unfortunately, it is an ending. However, that does get hampered by the fact the first 2 acts, while good, are clunky and have some issues to them, definitely. And everyone kind of agrees with that. So, yeah, number 4 goes to Endgame. Number 3 goes to Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This is just one of those nearly perfect structured films. The espionage elements to it, the thriller, the action, Winter Soldier Bucky is fantastic. Robert Redford being revealed to be Hydra and the villain is not something you expect necessarily. Excuse me. It's like a perfectly balanced film in every way. Nothing that is CGI in the film looks CGI. The helicarrier stuff looks fantastic. You buy the threat. It feels real. And every once in a while I get a name drop of like someone like Stephen Strange. So, and introduction of Falcon, which was perfect. So this is probably a near perfect Marvel film. My number two, Civil War. This took what Winter Soldier did and then amplified it further. It really is kind of Avengers 2.0, but 2.5, but it's still at its core a Captain America movie. And it really is the clash of ideologies, the war of belief, and what that belief cost you. Like Cap fully admits he screwed up with Tony not telling him. If he had actually told Tony what happened, maybe he would have spared Bucky and not snapped. But then you get into the aftermath of that. You get into the ramifications of, the concept of who was right and who was wrong. And I'm going to go on a hot take here because the movie is designed to make us understand it. It's Cat's movie. He's the one who's right. I'm not 100% sure he was. I don't think Tony's 100% right, but if we're talking about who's probably more in the right than the others, yeah, it's Tony, I think. They need to be held accountable. It doesn't need to be done in the same fashion as it was in the movie, because clearly they showed that way didn't work. But they need to be held accountable, because look what happened when your crusade to help your friend spilled over into the populace. You injured a bunch of soldiers just doing their job, and you probably caused a huge amount of property damage, endangering civilians, Cap, just to save your friend. And that's not an Avengers mission. What happens when you guys go and do shit on your own without government approval? What about that? So I'm not gonna lie. I think Tony had a little bit more of a point than Cap did. Now, their points ultimately should have merged into the ultimate agreement of, look, there needs to be and he even said there needs to be safeguards. We can't be abused, and then we have to be able to go when is needed. And Tony agreed with that. But unfortunately, Tony had to open his mouth and it ruined everything. But still, that airport scene is still one of the best fight sequences in the MCU today. So, yeah. But that doesn't stop it from being number one. In the end, Infinity War. Now, Infinity War is not the most well-paced movie. In fact, it at points is very rushed. But what it ultimately did as for an MCU film, what it ultimately did, as it was beyond what any of the Avengers films did. The previous Avengers films did, bringing these group of people together that coexist in this universe. It brought everyone together, and it brought them together in a way that made sense, that did not feel shoehorned, did not feel rushed. I did say kind of rushed, but only in terms of screen time for characters, because everyone needed character time. And it gave us to date what I still think is the best villain in the MCU with Thanos. And it didn't just give you one seriously good action sequence. It gave you multiple seriously good action sequences. The fight on Titan is still amazing. The fight in Wakanda is intense, and it's tense as hell. There are a few other minor fights that happen. His intro, where he bitch smacks the Hulk around without using the Power Stone, it cements like, oh no, we don't fuck with this guy. And that end is probably one of the most impactful endings the MCU ever had, because it wiped out half the universe and the villain won. And it really was the complete package. You brought all these characters you loved into the fold, and it balanced them out perfectly, and it perfectly balanced as everything was. Now, like I said, It's maybe got some structure problems here or there, but for my money, I think this really is. I think this is the peak of the MCU ultimately. Endgame is technically the peak at the very end. It's still a little choppy throughout the first 2/3. This I actually think truly was the peak of the MCU. So that is my ranking of all the MCU films to date. Will I do? I'll probably have to keep doing re-rankings. I won't do it with Miss Marvel. I'll wait for a couple other. I keep saying Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, the Marvels. I'll wait till a couple more films come out. Hopefully, the writer's strike will end soon and nothing will get too delayed. But until then, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. See you next time.